Shadows of the storm. The lights in relay station Omega 17 flickered for the third time that hour as thunder rolled across the alien sky. Technician Elias Reed watched through reinforced windows as violet lightning tore through clouds the color of bruised plums, illuminating the jagged mountains surrounding the station. These storms on Vesta Prime were getting worse, and he was the only one left to witness them. Just 6 more weeks, he muttered to himself, adjusting the environmental controls. 6 more weeks of monitoring this desolate outpost before his rotation ended and he could return to civilization, assuming the supply shuttle didn't cancel again due to the increasingly volatile weather. Elias had volunteered for this isolated assignment after the incident on Europa Station. Administrative reassignment, they'd called it. A polite way of saying exile after he'd questioned Colonial Command's mining policies that had destabilized an indigenous settlement. Now he was the lone guardian of a communications relay that barely functioned half the time, on a planet where the atmosphere itself seemed determined to drive him mad. The storm intensified, rain lashing against the station's exterior like liquid bullets. Elias checked the perimeter shields, holding at 70% capacity. Good enough, though the drainage systems were working overtime. He poured himself a cup of synthetic coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste, and settled in for another long night of monitoring systems that rarely needed his attention. The knock came just as he was reviewing yesterday's transmission logs. At first, he thought it was debris hitting the outer hull. It happened during the worst storms. But then it came again, 3 distinct impacts against the emergency airlock. Deliberate. Impossible. The nearest settlement was 200 kilometers away, and no one traveled during storm season. Elias activated the external cameras, but the downpour rendered them nearly useless, showing only sheets of purple-tinged rain and occasional flashes of lightning. Another knock, more urgent this time. Elias hesitated, then grabbed the station's only weapon, a pulse pistol he'd never fired outside of mandatory training, and approached the airlock. Standard protocol dictated he should alert Central Command before opening the door to an unidentified visitor, but the communications array had been offline for hours due to the storm. "Identify yourself," he called through the intercom. Silence, then a voice, soft but clear, "Please. Safety. Storm." The translation matrix in the communication system struggled with the accent, but the meaning was unmistakable. Someone, or something, needed shelter. Against his better judgment, Elias initiated the airlock sequence. The outer door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and a figure stumbled inside. As the chamber pressurized and the inner door opened, Elias raised his weapon, finger hovering near the trigger. What emerged was not what he expected. The visitor stood slightly shorter than him, drenched in rainwater that pooled on the metal floor. Their skin was a pale blue-gray with intricate patterns that seemed to shift subtly in the station's artificial light. Large, almond-shaped eyes reflected the overhead lights like mirrors, and where hair should have been, delicate tendrils moved with a life of their own, sensing the environment. Elias recognized the species immediately, Vesperin, native to a system several light-years from this sector. But what was one doing here, alone, during the worst storm season in decades? "You can lower your weapon," the visitor said, their universal translator producing accented but understandable standard English. "I mean no harm." Elias kept the pistol raised. "Identification?" The visitor's tendrils rippled, a sign of hesitation. "I am called Nix. My ship, damaged. Saw your station's energy signature. There are no registered flight paths through this sector during storm season. Emergency landing. Unplanned." Nix's gaze darted around the station, taking in the sparse furnishings, the blinking consoles, the single occupant. "You are alone here?" "Answer my questions first," Elias countered, though he finally lowered the weapon slightly. "What were you doing in this system?" Nix took a shaky step forward, then steadied themselves against the wall. "Research expedition. Atmospheric anomalies." A pause. "Your storm patterns are unique." It wasn't a complete lie, Vesta Prime's weather systems were indeed studied by xenometeorologists across several systems, but Elias sensed there was more to the story. "Show me your credentials." Nix reached slowly into a pocket in their form-fitting suit and produced a data chip, waterlogged but intact. Elias inserted it into a reader, and holographic information flickered to life: research permits, travel visas, scientific credentials. All apparently legitimate, though he had no way to verify them with communications down. "Research vessel Lumina," Elias read aloud. "Where's the rest of your crew?" "Solo mission. Small vessel, automated systems." The explanation was plausible, if unusual. Solo researchers weren't unheard of, especially among Vesperans, known for their independent scientific pursuits. Outside, lightning struck so close that the entire station trembled. The lights dimmed momentarily before the backup generators kicked in. "Your ship," Elias said, making a decision. "Where did it go down?" "Northwestern Ridge. 7 kilometers. Nix gestured vaguely. "Automated repair systems activated. 3 days, perhaps 4. "And you walked 7 kilometers through this?" Elias couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. Nix's tendrils flattened against their skull, embarrassment, perhaps. Miscalculated storm severity. Unwise decision. Elias sighed, holstering his weapon. "Well, you can't go back out in that. Emergency protocols allow for temporary shelter in extreme circumstances." He gestured to a storage compartment. "There are thermal blankets in there. Dry yourself off before you short-circuit something." Relief visibly washed over Nix's features. Gratitude. While the Vesperan wrapped themselves in metallic thermal blankets, Elias retrieved a container of nutrient bars and a hydration packet. "I don't know if these are compatible with your biology." Nix scanned the offerings with a small device from their pocket. "Acceptable. Thank you." They ate in awkward silence, the storm providing a chaotic soundtrack. Elias couldn't help but study his visitor when they weren't looking, the way their tendrils occasionally reached out to sense the air currents, the slight phosphorescent glow that emanated from the patterns on their skin when the lights flickered, the careful, measured movements. "You have questions," Nix said suddenly, catching Elias mid-observation. He didn't deny it. "It's not every day a Vesperan scientist crashes near my station during the worst storm season in recorded history. You are suspicious." "Should I be?" Nix set down the half-eaten nutrient bar. "You are isolated here. Vulnerable. That's not reassuring." A flicker of what might have been amusement crossed Nix's face. "I meant, your caution is warranted. But unnecessary." Elias leaned back in his chair. "Let's say I believe you're a researcher. What exactly were you studying that required flying into storm season?" "Electromagnetic anomalies in upper atmosphere. Similar patterns appearing across 3 systems now. Energy signatures inconsistent with natural phenomena." That got Elias's attention. "You think someone's generating these storms?" Nix's tendrils rippled. "Uncertain. But patterns suggest intervention." Before Elias could press further, the station's alarm system activated, a low, pulsing tone that indicated a perimeter breach. He moved quickly to the main console, calling up the external sensor array. "Something's approaching from the east," he said, squinting at the readings. "Too small for a vehicle, moving too deliberately for local wildlife." Nix was beside him instantly, tendrils fully extended in what Elias recognized as an alert posture. "How many?" 2 signatures. Humanoid. Heavy equipment. He looked up at Nix, whose mirror-like eyes had widened perceptibly. "Friends of yours?" "No." The word came out barely above a whisper. "Not friends." Elias activated the external communication system. "Unidentified visitors, this is Relay Station Omega, 17. State your business." No response, just the static hiss of the storm. The sensor showed the two figures still approaching, now less than 500 meters from the station. "They won't answer," Nix said, voice tight. "They're not here for you." Understanding dawned on Elias. "You're not running from the storm, are you?" Nix's gaze met his, and for a moment, Elias saw something ancient and unknowable in those reflective eyes. "I should not have come here. I've endangered you." "Who are they?" "Collectors. Hunters." Nix's tendrils writhed in agitation. "My people have something they want." "And what's that?" Nix hesitated, then placed a hand on the console. Immediately, the station's systems responded, displays brightening, data flowing faster, communications suddenly clearing despite the storm's interference. "We can interface with technology," Nix explained. "Not just operate it, become part of it. Some of us more than others." Elias stepped back, stunned. "That's why they're after you? Some kind of biological tech interface? They believe they can extract it, replicate it. They've tried with others." Nix's voice dropped lower. "Those attempts were unsuccessful." The implications were chilling. Elias had heard rumors of black market operations targeting rare biological capabilities, but nothing this sophisticated. "How did they find you?" "My ship's emergency beacon. I disabled it, but not quickly enough." Nix looked at the approaching signatures again. "I can leave. Draw them away. In that storm. You'll die before you make it a kilometer." Elias shook his head, making a decision that would likely end his career, if he survived. "We need a plan." The signatures were 300 meters out now, moving with the confidence of predators who knew their prey was cornered. "The station's defensive systems are minimal," Elias said, thinking aloud. "But we have advantages, knowledge of the layout, control of the environment." He looked at Nix. "And your ability." For the first time, something like hope flashed across Nix's features. "You would help me?" "Why?" Elias thought about Europa Station, about the indigenous settlement, about decisions made by distant authorities who never saw the consequences. "Let's just say I have experience with people who take things that don't belong to them." Outside, lightning split the sky again, briefly illuminating two armored figures moving through the deluge toward the station. The storm raged on, but inside Relay Station Omega-17, Human and Vesperin began to prepare for an entirely different kind of tempest. Whispers in the dark. The station's emergency lighting cast long shadows across the control room as Elias and Nix worked rapidly to prepare for their unwelcome visitors. Outside, the storm had intensified, sheets of violet rain pounding against the reinforced windows while thunder rolled across the alien landscape like celestial drums. "How much time do we have?" Nix asked, tendrils rippling with nervous energy as they interfaced with the station's security systems. "Minutes, maybe less," Elias replied, checking the external sensors again. "They're taking their time, moving carefully. Professional." Nix's slender fingers moved across the control panel with preternatural speed, their skin glowing faintly where it touched the technology. "I've rerouted auxiliary power to the internal defense grid. It's rudimentary, but better than nothing," Elias finished, retrieving emergency equipment from a storage locker. He handed Nix a portable shield generator. "Take this. It's standard issue, barely holds against conventional weapons, but it might buy you seconds if needed." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Elias felt a strange tingling sensation, like a mild electric current passing between them. Nix's eyes, mirror-like and unreadable, met his for a moment that seemed to stretch beyond time. "You risk much for someone you just met," the Vesperin observed quietly. Elias shrugged, checking his pulse pistol's charge. "Maybe I'm tired of watching from the sidelines." A proximity alert chimed softly, the intruders had reached the outer perimeter. Elias gestured toward the secondary control room. "That's our fallback position. Narrow corridors, single entry point, emergency escape hatch leading to the maintenance tunnels. And if they breach that? Then we improvise, Elias said with more confidence than he felt. Something tells me you're good at that. For the first time since arriving, Nix's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. A necessary skill when one is hunted. The main airlock's external sensors registered a bypass attempt, sophisticated technology working to override the station's security protocols. Elias had rerouted the standard entry procedures, creating a cascading authentication sequence that would delay them, but not for long. "They're good," he muttered, watching the security feed. The two figures were humanoid but completely encased in sleek armor that pulsed with subtle energy patterns. Their helmets revealed nothing of the wearers inside, but their movements suggested military training, precise, economical, lethal. "The one on the left is Dravik," Nix said, tendrils extending toward the screen as if trying to reach through it. "The other, unknown to me. Friends of yours?" "Dravik was once an explorer, like me. Now he hunts his own kind for those who would weaponize our abilities." Nix's voice carried a weight of personal history. "The irony is that he once fought against such exploitation." The security panel flashed a warning: the first layer of encryption had been breached. Elias moved to the central console and initiated emergency protocols. "Station Emergency 447 Alpha," he spoke clearly. "Hostile intruders detected. Enacting security response measures." The station's artificial intelligence acknowledged with a soft chime, and throughout the complex, bulkheads began to seal, compartmentalizing the facility. It wouldn't stop determined hunters, but it would slow them down. "We should move," Elias said, grabbing a bag with emergency supplies. "They'll be through the main airlock in." A deep, reverberating boom interrupted him as the outer doors were forced open. Warning lights flashed across the control panels: atmospheric integrity compromised, security systems failing. The hunters had abandoned subtlety for brute force. "Now. We move now," Nix said urgently, already heading toward the corridor that would take them to their fallback position. They ran through dimly lit passages, the sound of heavy boots echo behind them. Elias paused at a junction, accessing a wall panel to seal the corridor behind them. The door slid shut with a hydraulic hiss, buying them precious moments. Inside the secondary control room, Nix immediately connected with the systems, tendrils splaying against the main interface. The displays came alive, showing the intruders' methodical progress through the station. "They're splitting up," Elias noted. "Covering more ground." "Standard hunting pattern," Nix confirmed. "Dravik will take the most direct route. The other will circle to cut off escape." Elias watched as one of the figures paused at a junction, apparently consulting something on their wrist. "They're tracking you somehow." Nix's tendrils writhed in distress. "My biological signature. Vesperins emit a distinctive electromagnetic field when interfacing with technology. Can you mask it?" "Not entirely. Suppress it, perhaps." Nix closed their mirror-like eyes in concentration. The ambient light in the room flickered, and for a moment, the tracking signal on the intruders' devices seemed to scatter, showing multiple potential locations throughout the station. "Clever," Elias murmured appreciatively. "But temporary?" "Yes. Minutes at most. They needed a more permanent solution." Elias's gaze fell on the emergency evacuation plans displayed on the wall, standard for all colonial authority outposts. These stations weren't built just for communication, they were designed as potential shelters during the planet's initial colonization. "The geothermal vents," he said suddenly. 3 levels down. They interfere with most scanning technology." Nix looked skeptical. "The heat levels are manageable with proper equipment," Elias finished, already pulling thermal gear from storage lockers. "And they connect to maintenance tunnels that lead to the surface, half a kilometer from the station." A crash echoed through the corridors, another barricade breached. They were running out of time. Elias handed Nix a thermal suit. "Put this on. It'll help with the heat and might further mask your signature." As Nix donned the protective gear, Elias accessed the emergency hatch controls. Once we're in the tunnels, I'll trigger the station's decontamination protocol. It won't stop them, but the electromagnetic pulse might disrupt their equipment long enough for us to reach the surface. And then? The question hung in the air between them. What then? Two fugitives on a hostile planet, with professional hunters in pursuit and a storm that could kill them as easily as their pursuers. Your ship, Elias said. You mentioned automated repairs. If we can reach it. The systems require my direct interface to complete the final sequences, Nix confirmed. But the distance, in this weather. Better odds than staying here. Elias checked the security feed one last time. One of the hunters, Dravik, according to Nix, was less than 2 corridors away. Time to go. The emergency hatch opened with a reluctant groan, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft that plunged into the station's lower levels. The air that wafted up was hot and sulfurous, the planet's geological activity providing both power for the station and, hopefully, their salvation. Elias went first, using the ladder rungs embedded in the shaft wall to descend carefully. Nix followed, moving with the natural grace of their species. 3 levels down, they emerged into a sweltering corridor bathed in red emergency lighting. The walls here were warm to the touch, the distant rumble of the planet's crust a constant presence. Geothermal regulation chamber is 50 meters ahead, Elias explained, checking a schematic on his wrist device. From there, we can access the external maintenance tunnels. They moved swiftly despite the oppressive heat, their thermal suits already working overtime to maintain bearable conditions. Behind them, the faint sounds of pursuit echoed down the shaft, the hunters had found their trail. The regulation chamber was a cavernous space filled with massive turbines that harnessed the planet's natural heat. Steam hissed from pressure valves, creating a misty environment that limited visibility and, more importantly, should interfere with tracking systems. The maintenance access is on the far side, Elias said, gesturing across the chamber. Once we're through, I can seal it with a security override. They were halfway across when a bolt of energy sizzled past Elias's head, striking a nearby pipe. Superheated steam erupted from the rupture, filling the air with a blinding fog. Elias pulled Nix behind a turbine housing as another shot illuminated the mist. Found you, a voice called out, artificially amplified by helmet speakers. Impressive evasion tactics, Specimen N7. But ultimately futile. Nix flinched at the designation, tendrils flattening against their skull. Dravik, they whispered. The human is irrelevant to our mission, the hunter continued, moving through the steam with methodical precision. Surrender now, and they need not be harmed. Elias checked his pulse pistol, a standard security weapon, likely outmatched by whatever the hunters carried. Still, in the steam-filled chamber, visibility worked against precision. I'll draw his fire, he whispered to Nix. Get to the maintenance access and start the override sequence. He will kill you without hesitation, Nix warned. Then I'll try to be hesitant in return. Elias managed a grim smile. Go. On my signal. Before Nix could protest further, Elias rolled from cover and fired 3 rapid shots in the direction of the hunter. The energy pulses illuminated the steam briefly, revealing a shadowy figure ducking behind a nearby conduit. Return fire sizzled through the space where Elias had been a moment before. Using the distraction, Nix darted toward the maintenance access, moving with silent efficiency. Elias continued firing, changing position after each shot, creating the illusion of multiple attackers. The hunter was disciplined, his return fire measured and precise, but the environment worked against his advanced technology. Elias reached into his pocket and removed a small cylindrical device, a maintenance drone's power core. With a swift adjustment, he overrode the safety protocols and tossed it toward the largest concentration of steam pipes. The resulting explosion wasn't large, but it ruptured multiple pipes simultaneously, filling the chamber with an impenetrable fog and a deafening hiss. Using the chaos, he sprinted toward the maintenance access where Nix was already interfacing with the control panel, tendrils splayed across the surface. The door slid open just as another energy bolt cut through the steam nearby. "Go!" Elias shouted, firing blindly to cover their retreat. They tumbled through the doorway together, and Nix immediately connected with the control panel on the other side, initiating an emergency lockdown. The heavy door slammed shut just as their pursuer emerged from the steam, his featureless helmet reflecting the red emergency lights. They found themselves in a narrow tunnel carved directly into the planet's crust, reinforced with metal supports and lined with conduits that carried power from the geothermal plant to the surface facilities. The air was hot but breathable, and a faint light at the distant end suggested an exit. "That won't hold him for long," Elias said, checking his weapon's charge, less than 30% remaining. "I've scrambled the override codes," Nix replied, tendrils still interfacing with a nearby control node. "And initiated the decontamination protocol you mentioned." A pause. "Thank you, Elias Reed." It was the first time Nix had used his full name, and something in the way they said it made Elias look up. The Vesperan's mirror-like eyes seemed to reflect more than just the tunnel's dim lighting. There was a depth there, an ancient knowledge that made Elias feel simultaneously small and significant. "Don't thank me yet," he replied, nodding toward the tunnel ahead. "We still have to reach your ship in the middle of the worst storm season on record, with 2 professional hunters on our trail." "The storm may work in our favor," Nix said, disconnecting from the control node. "My people evolved on a world with similar atmospheric disturbances. We can sense patterns in chaos." A distant boom echoed through the tunnel, the hunters breaching another barrier. They needed to move. The tunnel stretched ahead, leading them away from the station and toward an uncertain future. As they ran, side by side, Elias realized that for the first time since his administrative reassignment, he felt something beyond the dull resignation that had become his constant companion. Here, fleeing for his life with an alien fugitive, he felt alive. The exit loomed closer, a circular hatch that would open onto the planet's storm-ravaged surface. Beyond it lay 7 kilometers of treacherous terrain, a damaged ship that might or might not be reparable, and hunters who would not abandon their prey easily. "Ready?" Elias asked, hand on the exit controls. Nix's tendrils extended toward him, brushing his arm with a touch as light as a whisper. "Together," they said, and in that single word was a universe of possibility. Elias nodded and activated the hatch. It swung open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the violet storm beyond, beautiful, terrible, and waiting.